Welcome. I am Janice Hockley, and I am so happy to be here to introduce you to Life Sketches, Family Search Studio, Chico, California. And I am honored to introduce you today to the Egan family, and that is Roger and Helen Egan. And they are longtime residents of Paradise. They've relocated and they are missed. And with that, I wanted to have them, would you tell us a little bit about you, about your beginnings and how you got here, and we'll start there.
Okay, you want to start?
Well, I was the youngest of three girls, and they were kind of spread out apart quite a bit. My oldest sister is 11 years older than I am. My middle sister is 6.5 years older than I am. And that's just the way we came.
I'm the oldest of four boys. So theoretically, that means that I could boss her around a lot since she's the youngest, and I'm the oldest. It hasn't worked out that way, but it's a good theory.
But that's
anyway.
usually the best combination.
That's right. It's worked out fine. It's been a great combination. 52 years, we celebrated just a couple days ago.
And tell us a little bit about your education, how you met each other, how you proposed, and we'll go from there.
Well, I graduated from East High School, and I was going to the University of Utah. And it was as a actually it's not young women's, a gleaner rep for the stake.
I remember those days.
That I was introduced to Roger.
Predecessor to YSA, the Young Single Adults.
Right.
Yes.
MN and Gleaners.
Right.
She was the Gleaner rep from her stake. I was the MN rep from our stake. We were having a joint stake activity. And because I was in charge of it and because I tended towards such things, I thought it'd be great to have a hippie party. And so everybody was invited to come dressed as a hippie. And it turned out that I awarded her the prize as being the most authentic looking hippie chick. Her sister was a fashion model. She had access to some great clothes. But to tell you the truth, I was not all that impressed with her. She was not all that impressed with me. We had a mutual friend, Mel Young, who convinced her I was dying to go out with her.
I thought I could give him a break.
And he told me the same thing, that she really wanted to go out with me. So I said, yeah, okay, why not? And the rest is history. But several years later, we ran into Mel and we said, Mel, we got to thank you for bringing us together. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, no.
That never happened. So we like to think that one of the three Nephites disguised himself as Mel Young.
It was supposed to happen at the time and the way it did, so it was perfect.
Well, actually, I think it was supposed to happen because her great-great-grandfather was traveling with the Hodgett Independent Wagon Train coming back from a mission. He was accompanying the Martin Handcart Company. My great-great-grandfather and his mother and his sisters were part of that handcart company. And in her great-great-grandfather's journal, he talks about helping a number of the immigrants cross the last crossing of the Sweetwater on his horse. So we like to think that her great-great saved my great-great so that we could have a great-great life together.
So
And we have.
And you have. And I believe that. I believe things are meant to be when they happen, especially for you to find out that as well.
So we were at the University of Utah together and got married. And I went on I finished my master's degree there in creative writing, and she finished her bachelor's degree. And then we moved, first big move together as a married couple was back to New York City, where I was simultaneously working on my doctorate in higher education while she was having our first baby. We had our New Yorker. We were there for 5 years till New York City went bankrupt. And from there we went to Redlands, California.
Where our second child was born, our son Adam. So we had our laid-back Southern California boy.
So I was dean of students there and faculty fellow in education and in English. And then from there, then they had a reorganization, and I was out of a job again. Whereupon we moved to the University of Maine at Augusta, where I was dean of community services.
And we had our third child in Maine.
Yeah, third child.
A maniac.
So each move you had a child.
Not only that, but each move she was always pregnant when we had to put wallpaper and paint on the walls of our new house.
Or else I just delivered the baby.
Yeah, it was very convenient. So yeah, then we ended up coming back to Butte College, where we were there for 32 years until the fire. I retired from Butte College, and I was Dean of Instruction at that institution.
Well, I understand that since you moved so much, that must have been a little difficult. How was that for you to cope with all those moves and all those friends and all those changes and babies?
Changes are easy when you have the gospel of Jesus Christ in your life. We always knew that there was a group of saints waiting to welcome us, to be our family, our home away from home. It was especially true for us in the Staten Island branch. In fact, it was a dependent branch, if you can believe it. It was a twig, I guess. And coming from the Wasatch Front, we considered ourselves at that time the intelligentsia. And you know what? You go in the mission field, and they don't care what you look like if you're wearing pants to church at that time, or if you have long hair. They want to know if you'll show up and take a job. We said, yeah. And they said, you are welcome. It was the best place for us to have gone. Really strengthened our testimony and was a good foundation for us in the gospel of Jesus Christ, as well as our marriage.
You know, one fun story I meant to mention is before I met Helen, she appeared as one of the first Mormon pinup girls. I know that sounds a little strange. I think it is. But the New Era magazine decided that they would have 4 lovely young ladies featured in one of their magazines. And in fact, that issue was dedicated to LDS missionaries and servicemen. They wanted to remind them what was waiting for them when they got home. So she represented winter and posed in front of a snowmobile. And I think we have a photo of that we might be able to include in this. But I was a ski bum at the time. I hadn't met her yet. But right about the time I did meet her, she became a beauty queen. Maybe you should tell us about that, Helen.
Oh, some 30 years previous to that, my mother had been the U-Days queen at the University of Utah. And unbeknownst to me, I was a freshman year, and a
Scholastic
Honorary Society for Freshman Women had put my name in. I didn't even know I'd been put up
That's
for
on
the
for
U-Days.
the both, the Scholastic and the Beauty.
Right.
Yeah.
So
she's the whole package.
Good.
So,
Exactly,
so
full
I was,
package.
I was surprised about it. I said, well, sure, heck, why not? And it wasn't until I got involved with it that I found out that whoever came the one to win this pageant was going to go on to the Miss Utah,
Oh, no.
which is the Miss America pageant. So I said, oh, this will be interesting. So I didn't want to be out any money, so I used an old modeling picture to put in the program. And I just dragged out some dresses of my sister's that she had designed back when she was in her days at the U. And I ended up winning the U-Days Queen.
Wonderful.
And then from there I
Do you have a
went...
picture of that?
Oh, I think, well, not from that, but I have pictured the modeling picture that I wanted to have included in the program for the Miss Utah pageant. It's interesting that stuff is so, well, it just depends on what group of judges are that. The young woman who was my first runner-up for the U-Days Queen, I was her first runner-up for Miss Utah. She went on to win and went to the Miss America pageant.
I love the question they ask you, though, the world peace type question that they always ask.
Oh, right.
What was your question?
The question was put to me that what did I gain the most from my experiences being a New York model working for Eileen Ford? And I said, $40 an hour. That was it.
Did you crack them up?
Oh, definitely.
Well, and it also might have been an incentive for the missionaries in the field or those that were in the service that received Dear Johns that there's some beautiful, smart, intelligent, spiritual women that are at the home front. Not to worry. But Roger probably had his eyes on you about that time,
Well,
am I
that's
right?
about the time I met her, right after that, yeah.
I wanted to wait till an old boyfriend came back from his mission. It was so close.
Oh, I didn't want to wait for him to come back from his mission.
Definitely not.
all kinds of things could go wrong with that arrangement. So we went to his homecoming together, as man and wife.
Oh, so you got married before he came home from his mission?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
That was smart, Roger.
So he looked out over the audience and he said, I want to thank you all for being here, especially my girlfriend and her husband.
They got a lot of laughs. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there were some other girls there that were waiting for him too. So it all worked out.
It all worked out.
All right. So missions. I want to hear about the missions. Well, Roger, you went to Argentina.
Right.
Correct.
Back in 65.
65, 66.
Right, yeah.
Came back in 67.
We were working for the very first steak at that time. And that was
you
our
have
big
stories
dream.
from your mission?
That was our big dream. Oh, there's so many stories from the mission, but that's been so long, I'm not sure I remember them. But I do remember meeting with Angela Brea, who later became a general authority, and we were working on ganando una estaca, getting a steak, that first steak in Argentina, and that was a big dream of ours to have a steak. I look back at Argentina now with all the missions and temples and steaks, and it's just it's exploded since that time. But yeah, together we did 2 missions. First one was right after I retired. I think President Brown felt that I wasn't ready to. He wanted to ease me out of being involved with young people. It was really a great transition. So he gave us an assignment to be missionaries with the young single adults. And he said, basically, we're going to call you missionaries. You figure out what you need to do. And so there's no job description or no particular responsibilities. So we taught some institute classes. We attended the YSA Award. We had a lot of fun times together. Played Quidditch with them.
Well, I remember when you came in because I was in the YSA Ward.
That's right.
With my husband, who was in the bishopric.
That's right.
Yes.
The best years of our lives. It was hard to go back to regular wards after that. They were so much fun, and you came in there, and you added to that. You guys dressed up in costumes for different things. You love costumes. You have a history of costumes in your family and trunks of clothes. And if we have time, we can maybe get into some of that. She came dressed up, and they had so much fun with you two as a couple.
I think we did find a photo of me as Professor Plum and her as a dowager for the clue party that they had.
That's right. I remember the clue party. And you came full costume and really incented. Just got everybody behind you with dressing up, and then going to the Star Wars party, and they said, we saw Sister Ekins there, and she was dressed up in the #1 costume.
Oh, that was Cole was kind enough to say that I could come to with them to their before the showing of the 3rd pirate show with Johnny Depp.
Oh, and the pirate show, and your costume.
Yeah, there were actually some pirate reenactors that showed up for different things, and they complimented me on my pirate suit. So I had a lot of fun with that. It's interesting, though. All the fun is before the theater even starts, and I was so late when it started at midnight. I thought, well, I've had my good times. I'm going to go home and go to bed now.
But you really incentivated that young ward with those children that you could get down and play with them on their level in their costumes, and they were just enamored with you. And I know, I'm not sure if you want to talk about the Yoda call.
Oh, golly.
Can you tell that a little bit about that story and how that bonded with Brother Corey Ekins, was it?
Yes, Corey, he'd say, do the Yoda. I'd say, all right, are you ready? I'd say, a Jedi's strength flows from the Force, but beware the dark side. And that'd crack him up every
She'd
time.
usually squat down low when she did that.
You have to really be the Yoda thing. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, in our next mission, we got to dress up again because we were reenactors of early California Mormon pioneers with the California Living History Mission. And we reenacted William Brown Ide and his wife, Susan, who were the first known members of the church to come to California. We also reenacted George Q. Cannon and his wife, Elizabeth, who came out to start the Western Standard newspaper. And he was the second mission president here in California, following Parley P. Pratt. So we had really fun time. It was a great mission. You get to grow beards. I didn't get to do that because I was working in the temple, but blow up things, shoot off black powder. It was wonderful.
You always have fun. Wherever you two are, you have fun, and the energy is so good.
Well, thank you.
Roger
Yes.
had already done extensive research already in those fields. He wrote a book about George Buchanan and the newspaper wars, and he also put together an essay that appeared in a
Mormon Historical Studies.
yeah.
But what was the
Brown.
title of the book and title of the essay?
Well, the book was Defending Zion, George Buchanan and the California Mormon Newspaper Wars of 1856 to 1857. Typical long scholarly
And that's all
title.
your educational work. When
But the best book is one we did together,
yes.
which was called The Flumes and Trails of Paradise,
I've heard of that.
Hiking Through History on the Ridge.
Yes,
And that
that's
was
the
a-
other thing we're talking about. We missed the hiking. You've got to throw that in there somewhere. My goodness.
Well, Helen was an avid hiker, and then when I retired, I started going out with her, and we were out on the trail one day, and we said, somebody ought to write a book about all these wonderful trails we found. And
Yeah, he was putting pictures of us having fun on Facebook, and people would say, "Where is this? We want to go."
yeah, and so we looked at each other and said, I guess we need to do that. So
We were afraid we didn't know whether PG&E would sue us for.
PG&E it turns out, had bigger problems to worry about than us.
Yes. So can people still go on those flumes and those hikes today?
Well, the ones that still exist, we moved to Oregon since the fire, so I know some of the flumes aren't up anymore. Others still are, and I don't know to what extent they posted them and so forth. Understandably, P&G's got very worried about their liability issues,
So they.
but the book was very.
People have been
very
trying to
popular.
get that.
We
book
sold it
now.
like 5,000 copies. And
5,000
we
copies.
left the rest of our stock with the Chamber of Commerce up on the ridge to help rebuild the town.
So if someone wanted to read the book and get a copy of it, how would they go about doing that?
That'd be the Paradise Ridge Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
If there's any
Thank you.
copies
There
left,
might be some in local bookstores as well, but
Okay.
we've not really paid attention to
or
that.
online.
Thank you about that. So
Sure.
I think, Helen, there was one more thing, but Roger didn't want you to talk about it. But I think it's, worthy because you guessed who it was when they were putting out the awards and gave the honors. Would you talk about that?
Eventually, she figured out who it was.
Yeah, the California Humanities Association, which Roger and Butte College assisting brought back into the red when they'd been, or
Right.
in the black rather,
Right.
out of the red. They had decided to give him a special award. He had worked with the group for about 3 years, I guess,
Probably about that, yeah.
and had brought the group back into prominence. And they had the special award that they're giving to someone who was going to be unique. And they're going on and on about this individual, how they'd done all this international travel, how they'd been to South America and to Japan. They had all these accolades and publications. I said, gee. This
And brought
guy-
them back to Butte for others.
Yeah, whatever. Anyhow, and they were going on and on about, I thought, boy, this guy is really impressive. And then they started saying, wait a minute. I think they're talking about Roger.
That took her long enough to figure it out, but
Yeah, I said, dang, we should get a copy of that so I'd have it for your obituary or, on your funeral.
You have to save that for for your grandchildren and great grandchildren. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, while we were serving our mission, doing the reenacting stuff, there was a point in time when we didn't have our clothing ready. We discovered, at first, they were so strict about the clothing and being accurate. I thought, man, these people are all clothing Nazis. But then I realized that the reason why they're that way is when you go into the state parks and into the public schools, you owe it to your audience to become those people that you're representing, and you want to be as authentic as you possibly
Down
can.
to the T of what they wore.
You run down to your underwear and your shoes, and that really gets you into the spirit and the experience of those people.
And of course, you have the trunks and the costumes that were inherited from your
Oh
family.
yeah, well when we were
Used to
waiting, Yeah.
Oh, the fire.
Used to have.
Yeah,
fire.
before that, I was the fortunate recipient of a lot of things from my grandmother's home. There was our wedding picture, I'm wearing my grandmother's wedding dress,
From what year?
1890 something or other, I'm not sure.
I saw that picture, and it's a beautiful dress.
And then we had our reception in the Lion House, which was the same period.
Oh,
And so when we started our mission and my clothing was not ready, we didn't want to, sit around and waste time. So that's when we did George Buchanan. But from that period on, and I was representing his first wife, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for our 1840s clothing to be created, we did it from the 1880s looking backward. So it all worked out at a fun time.
And nobody could give me a hassle about not being authentic.
That's pretty authentic.
well, there's so many things to still ask you about. Tell me about the time that you had the long hair and that you, I know different things in your life. I know the gospel brought you through to everything and onto your mission and
Well, when I got back from my mission, I got very much involved in the whole anti-war movement with Vietnam and everything, and I grew my hair long. And that when we moved to Staten Island, it was really getting long. And the branch president wanted to call me as the Elders Quorum president. The stake president told him that would be fine as long as I cut my hair. Whereupon the branch president said, if you don't let me call him the way he is, I'm going to start growing my hair out. At which point he relented. But it's interesting. One day we were in the temple, and as I walked in, Helen overheard two older ladies in a kind of typical old lady whisper say, "Who let that dirty hippie in the temple?" And when she shared that with me, I just decided, okay, it's time I cut my hair. If I'm going to be a stumbling block to sweet little sisters like that, it's time to cut my hair.
well, and I can understand.
I think I'm about to again.
Coming home. The story about your grandfather. I know we talk a little bit about the fire because there was a very spiritual experience that actually saved your life. And do you want to tell your grandfather's story first? Because they kind of come together with this. I'll let you two decide how you want to present that because they both go hand in hand.
Well, as those who went through the Paradise Fire, it was November the 18th, the day of the fire.
It was 5 years ago this November.
It was November 2018.
But it was November the 18th.
Was it 18th? I don't
I
remember.
think so. I'm not sure.
Doesn't matter, does
I
it?
think so.
It was tremendous, and the next day after the fire, and we realized we had lost everything. I reflected on my great-great-grandfather, Sanford Porter, how he and his family had joined the church 3 months after the church was organized. So he was in Jackson County, Missouri, when the first persecutions broke out in 1833. In fact, in Nathan, his son's journal, he talks about the night that they were camped on the side of the Grand River, and there was an incredible meteorite shower that night. That was an incredible display, and they felt that was the answer to prayer and a comment that God would cause the heavens to shake for the saints, and they thought that was a fulfillment of Scripture. So when they were out there in the wilderness with nothing, I thought if Grandpa could make it in November with nothing except the clothes they could grab and what they could beg off of neighbors, we could certainly make it just fine.
In fact, as we fled the flames, everything in our car that we had, we thought, well, this would be a great time to be called back to Jackson County, Missouri. We're ready to go. We're all packed. We don't have to worry about renting a truck or anything. And it turned out we did go to Jackson County, Oregon.
But the signature experience that you're referring to is when we were stuck in traffic. We had not realized the day of the fire that there was a fire. I woke up very early and I looked towards the sunrise and I said, that does not look right. It's a fire sky. The sky was red. So I turned on the television trying to get more information. On the radio, nothing. Roger woke up.
Yeah, I came down and turned on the AM loop, and sure enough, the town was telling us that there were some evacuations, but our zone were to stay where we were. We realized later that whoever was in charge of that had already evacuated, so we're getting the same loop over and over again, telling people to stay in place when they really should.
Misinformation.
Yes, misinformation. But we were packing the car, and Helen looked across the street, and
Oh my gosh. Of course, there are ponderosa trees all around in Paradise. And we're on Wagstaff. And all of a sudden, the big ponderosa, one of the huge ponderosas in our neighbor's backyard across the street, it just went up in flames, just from top to bottom, just like a Roman candle. And I called to Roger and said, we got to get out of here now.
so we did, but then we got stuck in traffic, and we'd been there for maybe 45 minutes, both thinking we're probably going to die, but we didn't say that out loud to each other. I'm thinking about maybe I should go out in Billy Park and park in the middle of the grass somewhere. And I turned to Helen and I said, well, what do you think we should do? And bless her, Helen said, I think we should pray about it. You need to pray, say a prayer. So Helen offered a very simple prayer.
I said, Dear Heavenly Father, please show us the way out. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
And within 2 minutes of suddenly in our headlights, you realize it's just black as night.
Dead black.
10:30 in the
dead
morning.
black. You couldn't.
A fireman appeared. First fireman we'd seen. And he said, well, this road right here is now open. You'll see a lot of abandoned cars. People are sheltering in place at Walgreens. We drove up that road, passing dozens and dozens of abandoned cars. The traffic on Skyway was moving a little bit. And I thought, well, heck, I don't want to shelter in place. I want to try to get out of town. The far right lane coming up was open. I thought, well, forget this. We're going down. Nobody's going to give me a ticket today, I don't think. Everybody started following me when we did that. But we were grateful to get out. But, it wasn't until we were in Reading, 4:30 in the afternoon, that on our phone we got the message that we needed to evacuate.
Oh, no. So if you hadn't evacuated when you did,
Yeah.
you knew.
Yeah.
And you ended up in Jackson.
Jackson County.
How did that come about?
Well, we had some criteria that we were looking for. We wanted to be near a temple. The Medford Temple is 14 minutes from our home. We wanted to be near trees because we haven't learned our lesson. We wanted to be near a decent airport so we get to our grandkids. We wanted to be within 4 hours of Arcata, where one of our daughters lives, because they don't have a very good airport. We wanted to be near hiking trails, and all those things that came together for us in a little town called Jacksonville.
And you let me know that you knew we were supposed to buy that house.
Oh, the home we purchased was a very large home. It was the first place we never looked at homes that large because we never knew what our insurance settlement was going to be. Initially, they offered us 65% of the value of the policy. And I said, well, heck, I didn't pay 65% of the fees to have this insurance. But after about a year, we finally got the settlement of the insurance that we had paid for. But until that time, we didn't really know where we were going to end up. But when we saw this particular little house, we both felt through the Spirit that this is a house we should buy. And we later realized why.
Because your daughter lived with you for how long?
A year. We moved everything out of the upstairs, and they just moved in upstairs, and they were there for a year until he could settle his job there with Asante as a occupational therapist, and they could find a home on the other side of Medford and take care of us in our old age.
If we ever get to be old.
Well, that's it.
What have you learned from these very important lessons in your life?
Oh, golly, the fire was an incredible experience for me. I learned that all of God's children are important. And people of goodwill were the people that kept us going the prayers of people we didn't even know were blessing us and helping us. I know a lot of us who were not home, we missed the counseling that the people that were still here got from the stake. So we missed out on the counseling. We almost missed out on having the prophet come and speak to us, so we made a special point to come back, because we were going back and forth and bouncing all around trying to figure out where we were supposed to go, where we're going to settle. So after that fire, I realized it didn't matter what your faith is. If the desires in your heart are consistent with loving God and loving man as yourself, this is Christ has taught us. I also learned something about values clarification. That the things we lost in the fire were just stuff. And all those antiques and old dresses and the chests and the china and all the things I had for Grandma, they were just older stuff. But we had the things that really mattered. We had each other, we had our family, we had our faith, we had our trust in God. And that's all my grandfather had.
He led the way.
He did. You know, family is everything. I think one of the big important lessons we've learned through life is that how important it is for us to love one another. Try to do it unconditionally. Try to see each other as our Father in heaven sees us. Hard to do as a mortal. We know each other's flaws. We tend to be judgmental. It's a hard thing to overcome, but we love our kids. We love our 6 grandkids. We are grateful. We just had a family reunion recently where we had them all up there in Oregon with us, and family's everything. So people, love each other.
And as much as possible, if you have some extra, pay it forward. We were so blessed by the kindness. There was a Buddhist group who gave us $3,000 just because we lost everything. There was the Red Cross. There was the United Way. One of my cousins sent me $1,000. I said, oh, gee, there's so many people that are worse off than we are. And she said, well, I don't know the other people. I'm going to do with my money what I want to. And with that, we bought a picture of Christ that hangs in our home now.
This charity, the pure love of Christ.
Yeah.
It really was. I know as we were living in motels and hotels, the Muslim woman who was in charge of the breakfast, I pray for everyone. The Rastafarian gentleman that Roger ran into in a
Scary looking dude in the elevator. I thought, man, I don't know if I want to be in the elevator with this guy. By the time we got down to the bottom floor, he was praying for me.
Aww.
You know, I remember when a maid who refused to take a tip. She's from Somalia and she knows what it's like to be homeless. It was
and you were really worried.
Looking back, in many ways, the fire was one of the best things that's happened to us. If I could have it undone, I would, for the sake of the 85 people who lost their lives, and so many people who are still struggling because of it.
Yes.
Even just staying this weekend up in Paradise, Helen woke up this morning a little PTSD just being there, but it's trite, but it's very true that, you know, when a door closes, a window opens, and a lot of times the things that we see as great tragedies in life, the things we want to avoid, diseases. Helen struggles with Parkinson's, but I'll tell you, she's a better person because of it. But sometimes those things help make us better people.
Your mother told you about any diseases or whatever, what you have to do, right? She gave you a message.
Well, not a message so much. She gave it to me by her example. My mother had multiple sclerosis, which was diagnosed when I was about 5 years old. And then when I was about the same time I met Roger, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had a mastectomy. And she dealt with those 2 diseases at the same time, plus working full time and putting up with me as my growing up years. But she's definitely showed me the example of how you go forward, how you face that kind of thing. You pick up your burdens and you strive toward the future.
Your faith without works is dead, and you've done all the medical things that you need to do and all the surgeries, and look at you today. You wouldn't know you had Parkinson's.
That's a gift of God. I give El Grant. If anything good comes in my life, it was God.
Miracles.
And if people don't see it, it's because it's God's way of remaining anonymous.
And you talked about miracles that you've had too. And this is one of them, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's some others. Not sure we have enough time to talk about those. And our last question was, what would you like to have people remember you by and what your thoughts were? And you've covered them pretty well right here at the end. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to this?
I just want to say we're grateful for this opportunity to share a little bit of our life with whoever might be crazy enough to want to look at it. And we appreciate you and President Meyer for organizing this. It's been fun for us to watch these podcasts with other dear friends from the stake, and look forward to seeing more as time goes on.
And what I like too that I see with you is the blessings and everything that you receive from this. It's almost like a GPS. If you follow this and you put it out there with the prayers and with the GPS, he can guide you if you follow that and don't go off those paths and go forward. And that what you've given to the others through your service, through 3 missions, through helping everyone, and what you did with the youth and the YSI that I saw personally. Thank you very much for sharing today, and we hope we all can learn from your experiences.
Thank you.